In 2012, the world witnessed one of the most unusual aviation experiments ever conducted. Normally, when an airliner crashes, it is the result of mechanical failure, severe weather, human error, or an unexpected emergency. But this time, the story was completely different. A large passenger aircraft was intentionally crashed under carefully controlled conditions. It sounds unbelievable, but the purpose of this experiment was not destruction. The goal was to save lives in the future. For decades, aviation experts had been asking the same questions. What really happens to passengers during a plane crash? Which seats offer the best chance of survival? How effective are seatbelts during a high-impact landing? Which parts of the aircraft experience the greatest forces? Computer simulations and laboratory crash tests could only answer these questions to a certain extent. Researchers needed real-world data from an actual aircraft. That idea eventually led to one of the most ambitious aviation safety experiments in history. The aircraft chosen for the mission was a retired Boeing 727. Although it had completed its commercial service, it was still capable of flying safely. Instead of being dismantled, it was transformed into a flying laboratory. Engineers spent weeks modifying every section of the aircraft. Hundreds of sensors were installed throughout the cabin, inside the fuselage, beneath the floor, and within the structure of the airplane. These sensors would record acceleration, impact forces, structural deformation, and the movement of every important section during the crash. High-speed cameras were mounted throughout the cabin to capture every millisecond of the impact. Unlike ordinary cameras, these devices could record thousands of frames every second, allowing investigators to examine the crash frame by frame after the experiment. Instead of passengers, researchers filled the aircraft with advanced crash test dummies. These were not ordinary mannequins. Each dummy contained sophisticated sensors inside its head, neck, chest, spine, pelvis, arms, and legs. The instruments were designed to measure the exact forces that a human body would experience during a violent impact. Some dummies were seated with properly fastened seatbelts, while others were positioned differently to study various crash scenarios. Every row of seats was carefully selected to collect the maximum amount of useful information. The scientists wanted to understand how injuries varied depending on seating position, body posture, and restraint systems. Planning the crash itself was the greatest challenge. Someone had to fly the aircraft to the designated crash site, but no pilot could remain on board during the impact. After months of preparation, engineers developed a carefully controlled procedure. Highly experienced pilots would take off, climb to the required altitude, configure the aircraft for its final approach, activate the automated flight system, and safely leave the airplane before it reached the crash zone. The procedure required perfect timing and absolute precision. Even the smallest mistake could have endangered the crew or ruined years of preparation. Every step was rehearsed repeatedly until the team was confident that the mission could be completed safely. The crash location was selected in a remote desert area, far away from towns and populated regions. Safety was the highest priority throughout the experiment. Emergency response teams, firefighters, medical personnel, and engineers were stationed around the site long before the flight began. Numerous cameras were positioned on the ground to record the aircraft from different angles as it approached the impact zone. Additional aircraft monitored the flight from the air, while engineers in the control center watched every movement of the Boeing in real time. Large computer screens displayed altitude, speed, heading, engine performance, and navigation data as the aircraft moved toward its final destination. Finally, the day of the experiment arrived. Weather conditions were almost perfect. The skies were clear, winds were light, and visibility extended for miles. Engineers performed one final inspection before authorizing the mission to begin. Moments later, the Boeing 727 started its engines and slowly taxied toward the runway. As the throttles advanced, the aircraft accelerated down the runway and lifted smoothly into the sky. Everyone involved understood that this was not an ordinary flight. Every second of the mission represented years of planning, millions of dollars in preparation, and the possibility of making future air travel even safer. As the aircraft climbed to the predetermined altitude, the pilots carefully checked every system one last time. The automated flight controls were activated exactly as planned. Soon, the crew prepared to leave the aircraft, knowing that within minutes, the unmanned Boeing 727 would continue its final journey alone toward a carefully planned collision that would provide aviation researchers with information never before collected from a full-scale passenger aircraft. After the pilots safely exited the aircraft, the Boeing 727 continued flying completely on its own. Inside the airplane, there was not a single living person. The only occupants were crash test dummies, hundreds of electronic sensors, and dozens of high-speed cameras waiting to record every fraction of a second. From the control center, engineers monitored the aircraft's altitude, speed, heading, and descent profile. Every number on their screens had to match the planned flight path. If the aircraft deviated even slightly, years of preparation could be lost. As the aircraft approached the designated impact zone, it began its final descent. The nose gradually lowered while the landing gear remained extended, simulating the conditions of an emergency landing. The engines continued producing thrust, but not enough to maintain altitude. The Boeing moved steadily toward the desert floor at high speed. Cameras placed on nearby hills, helicopters, and chase aircraft captured the approach from every possible angle. Scientists watched silently as the aircraft grew larger on their monitors. There was no turning back. Seconds before impact, the aircraft was traveling at approximately 140 miles per hour. Dust began rising beneath the landing gear as the wheels made the first contact with the rough desert surface. The touchdown was far from smooth. Almost immediately, the landing gear collapsed under the enormous force. The aircraft bounced violently, causing the nose to slam into the ground. A massive cloud of dust exploded into the air, surrounding the airplane in seconds. The impact tore through the lower section of the fuselage. The nose section absorbed tremendous force, crushing inward as the aircraft continued sliding across the desert. The left wing struck the ground harder than expected, ripping apart sections of the aircraft's structure. Fuel leaked from damaged tanks, creating a dangerous situation, although engineers had minimized the amount of fuel carried to reduce the risk of a massive fire. Even so, flames eventually appeared around parts of the wreckage, producing thick black smoke that could be seen from miles away. Inside the cabin, the crash was unbelievably violent. Every crash test dummy experienced rapid deceleration within fractions of a second. Seatbelts tightened instantly, preventing many of the dummies from being thrown forward. However, the sensors recorded enormous forces acting on the head, neck, chest, and legs. Some overhead compartments burst open, while loose objects flew through the cabin at extremely high speed. Seats near the front experienced severe deformation as the structure collapsed around them. The cabin floor twisted under the enormous loads, and sections of the interior broke apart during the impact sequence. Within moments, emergency crews rushed toward the wreckage. Firefighters quickly controlled the flames, while engineers ensured that the area was safe to enter. Instead of rescuing passengers, their mission was to rescue data. Every sensor, memory device, and camera contained valuable information that could improve aircraft safety for decades to come. Teams carefully removed recording equipment before heat or fire could damage the stored information. Even the smallest sensor reading was considered valuable because it represented data that had never been collected from a full-scale passenger aircraft crash. When scientists began examining the results, they discovered several important patterns. The front section of the aircraft experienced the highest impact forces and suffered the greatest structural damage. Dummies seated in that area recorded the most severe injuries. In contrast, some dummies located toward the rear of the aircraft experienced significantly lower forces during this particular crash sequence. This finding immediately attracted worldwide attention. Many newspapers and television programs reported that the rear of an aircraft appeared to offer a better chance of survival. However, the researchers were careful not to draw a universal conclusion. They explained that every aircraft accident is different. The angle of impact, speed, terrain, aircraft type, structural failure, and post-crash fire all influence survival. A seating position that performs well in one accident may not provide the same protection in another. Perhaps the most important lesson involved seatbelts. The data clearly showed that properly fastened seatbelts dramatically reduced the movement of the crash test dummies during impact. Dummies without proper restraint experienced much greater movement and would likely have suffered far more serious injuries if they had been real passengers. The experiment reinforced a simple but powerful message that aviation experts have repeated for years. Wearing a seatbelt whenever seated is one of the easiest and most effective ways to improve survival during unexpected turbulence or an emergency landing. As investigators continued analyzing the enormous amount of recorded information, they realized that this experiment had produced one of the most complete sets of crash data ever collected from a real passenger aircraft. The findings would soon influence aircraft safety research, emergency procedures, and future cabin design in ways that few people could have imagined. The 2012 Boeing 727 crash experiment proved that sometimes the only way to improve safety is to understand disaster before it happens. By sacrificing one retired aircraft, researchers collected information that could help protect millions of passengers in the future. The experiment showed how different parts of an aircraft respond during a crash, how seatbelts significantly reduce injuries, and why every accident is unique. While many people focused on the idea that the rear seats appeared safer in this particular test, the scientists emphasized that there is no universally safest seat on every flight. The outcome of any crash depends on countless factors, including the angle of impact, speed, terrain, structural damage, and post-crash conditions. More importantly, the experiment reminded the world that modern aviation safety is built on constant research, testing, and learning from every possible scenario. The data collected from this single controlled crash continues to support engineers, investigators, and safety experts in designing stronger aircraft and improving emergency procedures. Every reinforced seat, every improved seatbelt, every updated safety regulation, and every advancement in aircraft design represents lessons learned through years of scientific research. Today, commercial aviation remains one of the safest forms of transportation ever created. Millions of flights take off and land safely every year because experts never stop studying how to make flying even safer. The Boeing 727 experiment was not about destroying an airplane. It was about protecting future lives. It proved that sometimes one carefully planned sacrifice can produce knowledge that benefits generations of travelers around the world. If this story surprised you, remember that behind every major advancement in aviation safety lies years of research, countless hours of testing, and the determination to ensure that every passenger has the greatest possible chance of returning home safely. Imagine if this experiment had never happened. Aviation experts might never have discovered many of the lessons that continue to make flying safer today. One retired Boeing 727 was sacrificed, but the knowledge gained from that single crash has helped improve aircraft safety around the world. The next time you board a plane and fasten your seatbelt, remember that every safety rule exists because someone, somewhere, learned a lesson the hard way. If you enjoyed this story and want to discover more incredible facts from history, science, and aviation, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.